For decades, we've had this ultimate contest, right? Human intuition versus the cold, hard logic of a machine. And nowhere are the stakes higher than in the world of prediction. Today, we're diving into the story of an AI that didn't just compete, it actually managed to tie with the very best human minds on the entire planet. So, what kind of predicting are we even talking about here? Look, this isn't about something simple like looking at a stock chart. We're talking about messy, complex, real-world events. Think about questions like, will this specific law pass by the end of the year? That's called judgmental forecasting, and it is incredibly hard to get right. And for the longest time, the undisputed champs of this game have been this tiny, elite group of people known as superforecasters. These are folks who have this documented, almost spooky ability to see the future more clearly than the rest of us. They set an almost impossibly high bar for performance. All right, so if the best humans can do this, you'd think this would be a piece of cake for a powerful AI, right? I mean, just feed it all the news, all the data. But for a long, long time, that just wasn't the case. The machines kept failing, and they weren't even getting close. So the question is, why? What was the holdup? What was it about these complex forecasting problems that just completely stumped some of our most advanced large language models, LLMs? Well, the research really boils it down to three big problems. First off, their search was just awful. They were basically drowning in data but couldn't find the actual insights. Second, they were always hedging their bets, giving these timid probabilities around 50 or 60%, never willing to take a real stand. And third, they were just wildly inconsistent. You could ask the same question twice and get two totally different answers. Okay, so with all those problems, a new system was built from the ground up to solve them. And you got to think of it less like a single giant AI brain and more like a really smart recipe for making accurate predictions. And here it is. Meet the AIA forecaster. This is a big deal because according to the research, this is the first AI system ever to be verified at scale as matching the accuracy of human superforecasters. That's a huge milestone. So what's the secret sauce here? Well, it's this four-part process you see on screen. It kicks off with something called agentic search. Think of it like a team of super diligent AI researchers. Then it moves to multi-agent analysis. After that, a supervisor steps in to review all their work. And finally, it gets a statistical calibration. Let's break down exactly what that means. Okay, let's start with the first and, honestly, the most critical ingredient, agentic search. See, the old way, static search, was kind of lazy. It would ask one simple question online and just hope for the best. This new system, it's a whole different ballgame. It acts like a real researcher. It builds its own search queries, it reads the articles, and then it generates its own follow-up questions to dig deeper and deeper, gathering evidence piece by piece. So once all that deep research is done, the system does something really clever. It doesn't just ask one AI for an answer. Nope, it spins up a whole team of 10 independent AI agents. Each one gets all the evidence and comes up with its own forecast, complete with its own reasoning and sources, just like a team of human analysts would. Now, you can imagine, with 10 different analysts, you're going to get some disagreements, right? And that's where the third step comes in, and it's absolutely crucial. A supervisory agent steps in and acts like a skeptical editor-in-chief. It reads all 10 of those reports, it spots the contradictions, it fact-checks their disagreements, and then it produces a single, final, and way more accurate forecast. All right, but there's still that one last problem we talked about, the hedging. LLMs, by their very nature, play it way too safe. They're trained to be helpful, agreeable, so they almost never make a bold prediction. They just cluster all their answers in that safe little zone between 40 and 70%. And this slide just shows you the solution perfectly. It's so cool. On the left, you've got the before. That's the raw, kind of timid prediction of 60%. The final step is the statistical calibration that basically sharpens the forecast. It teaches the AI to be more confident when the evidence is strong. And you see on the right, in the after, it turns that wishy-washy 60% into a much more confident and more accurate 75%. It pushes the answers out of that mushy middle. Okay, so that's the recipe. It sounds amazing in theory. But the big question is, does it actually work in the real world? To find out, the researchers put this system through some seriously rigorous tests. Well, the very first finding was, let's just say it was stark. when they tried running the system without that advanced search component. The result was, and I'm quoting the paper directly here, a disaster. And this chart right here shows you just how much of a disaster it was. It's really night and day. They measured performance with something called a Brier score. All you need to know is it's like golf. The lower your score, the better you are. The system with search performed incredibly well, but the system without search, its score was so bad it was literally worse than just guessing randomly. This proves that smart, adaptive search isn't just a nice feature, it is the absolute cornerstone of this whole thing. All right, and that brings us to the main event, the final scorecard. This is the head-to-head showdown between the full AIA forecaster system and the best human minds on the planet. Okay, take a look at this table, and remember, lower scores are better. Right there at the top, the AIA forecaster gets a score of 0.187. Now, look right below it. The human superforecasters, 0.188. The system also beat the wisdom of the crowds from market prices, and it was way better than just using a standard model like GPT-4o out of the box. Let's just stop and let that sink in for a second. The difference? The tiny gap between the absolute best AI system and the world's most elite human experts was just 1,000th of a point. That's not just close. In the world of prediction, that is a statistical dead heat, a virtual tie. So what does this all mean for the future? Because this isn't just some cool tech demo. This has some really profound implications for, well, pretty much everything. So when you boil it all down, what are the big takeaways? First, we now have a proven recipe for AI that can predict at an expert level. We also know for sure that this agentic search isn't optional, it's essential. And incredibly, this whole approach can actually find predictive signals that even the financial markets miss. Bottom line, the gap between elite human forecasters and top-tier AI is pretty much gone. And that leaves us with one last, kind of mind-bending question to chew on. For so long, we've thought that this kind of deep intuition, this complex reasoning, was what made us uniquely human. But if an AI can now do that at the highest possible level, what's next? What job, what task is truly and permanently safe?